welcome to episode 7 of season 4 of On the Grid Podcast. We can finally say that it is race week. We're not pre-recording any episodes. It is race week. When we're recording this, it is a Monday afternoon, and we're looking forward to the Bahrain Grand Prix. And this is the episode where we'll be looking back at pre-season testing and looking ahead to the Bahrain Grand Prix, which will be on the Saturday. I'm your host, Adrian. Joining me, as per usual, is my co-host, Ethan Evans. Ethan, race week is finally upon us.
Yeah, it's been a long time since we've been able to say that, but it's finally good to get back to it, and hopefully we would just see a bit more of an interesting season than the last one.
Yeah, most certainly. But before we look ahead at Bahrain, let's look back at preseason testing. I'm going to be honest, I really wasn't watching preseason testing purely on the basis that I didn't want any of the kind of progress that was shown in preseason testing to hamper or to change my mind during my season predictions, which will be out earlier this week, before this episode. But yeah, let's have a look back at what happened during the 3 days. So obviously, during day one, Max Verstappen topped the times of the day with a 1:30.134. On day two, it was Carlos Sainz, who dipped into the 1:29s with a 1:29.921. And on day three, it was Carlos Sainz's Ferrari teammate, Charles Leclerc, who was approximately 4 tenths slower, setting a 1:30.322. Before we dissect and look into what this sort of data means to each individual team, the what I had on the agenda was looking at the amount of yellow and red flags caused due to the track being not 100% fit for its purpose, being the big question on everybody's minds during coverage, and what Bahrain and tracks alike will be doing. Ethan, Bahrain have had approximately 3 months to have everything prepared, everything in tip-top condition, making sure that they're ready for pre-season testing, as they usually are, and for the race weekend that followed afterwards. Why are we seeing so many incidents where drains aren't covered properly and we're having drivers and their race cars damaged as a result of that?
Well, it's a good question, really, isn't it? Because, Bahrain's hosted how many Grand Prix? About what must be about coming up to 15 or so, at the very least. So surely this is nothing out of the ordinary that they shouldn't be expecting to happen. Yeah, very strange one. I don't know why there's been such fuss about the drain covers and why they've not been secured properly when this shouldn't be new information. And even when they have secured them, then they've still not been secured correctly and they've had to be re-secured. I think that happened on the second or third day. Um, yeah, so it doesn't bode well, but it's better that happens during testing than during the actual Grand Prix weekend. And hopefully all of those hiccups are kind of out the way now.
That is true. Obviously, we saw a number of drivers being affected by those rain covers. Charles Leclerc being one of them, and I think all of his floor had to be changed, due to him going over that drain cover, that drain which was not secured properly, and he kind of missed out on running. I believe it was during day one or day two, of testing. But okay, let's look into more of a dissecting of if what looked good. So let's start with Ferrari. They topped day two and day three in testing. Um, and I'm gonna say it myself. I think Ferrari wanted to look good during testing to show their kind of increase in race pace and one lap pace, which from statistics and from data has increased, but they're still projected to be at least 2 and a bit tenths behind Red Bull, who according to reports, were running a low engine mode, which does not bode well if you're looking at the rest of the grid because it just shows that um, Red Bull have so much left in the tank. But talking about Ferrari, what did you make of Ferrari, Ethan? Charles Leclerc topping the time in day three, Carlos Sainz in day two. It looks good. It looks very good so far for the two Scuderia drivers, and hopefully they can bring all of that preseason testing into the first qualifying of the season.
Yeah, I think from what it seems, Ferrari are the closest challengers. We don't know what engine modes people are running, like you said, or whether teams are sandbagging is usually the case. But Ferrari look to be the main competitors, seem to be the closest car to that Red Bull. I would imagine Red Bull would have plenty in hand, particularly at the start of the season. Whether how that will bode throughout the season remains to be seen. But I think that gap will be smaller than it was this time last year. I don't think Red Bull are going to win sort of 23 out of 24 races this year. Um, I'm hoping so more than anything because I don't think I can put up with another season of that. But we'll have to wait and see what happens. I think that Ferrari, like you said, I think are going to be the closest challengers. Sainz look quite good, and then Leclerc obviously topping on day three. Whether they're trying to make a statement by putting out the quickest times and running higher engine modes, that could be the case to try and make a statement from the get-go, but they're just going to get found out this weekend if that's what has been happening. So it'll be interesting to see where they are. I think they're slightly ahead of Mercedes as the second quickest at this moment in time though.
Let's talk about sandbagging, and Red Bull Racing are definitely a sandbagger here. I mean, Max Verstappen did top the charts in day one with a 1:31.34, which is what a second and a half slower than Carlos Sainz's time in day two, and about a second slower than Charles Leclerc's time in on day three. What have you made of them so far? I mean, Perez was about 8 tenths slower than Carlos Sainz on day two, and then on day three, Max Verstappen was approximately four and a bit tenths slower, and Perez was a second slower than Charles Leclerc on day three. What have you made of them? Do you think the reports are true that they've been sandbagging, they've been running low engine modes, and they don't want to show their true pace just yet?
Well, I imagine everybody's been running low engine modes to some extent because nobody wants to put unnecessary wear on the car before it's needed, really. Of course, I don't think anybody's expecting Red Bull not to be the team to beat going into this weekend. I don't think anybody can really say realistically that, they're thinking that Ferrari might be the quickest or Mercedes might be the quickest. Everybody's pretty clued in that Red Bull's still going to be the quickest team. It's just about that gap. That gap is the key thing because how many times last season was the gap a second or thereabouts between Red Bull and the rest of the field. So I think the main thing for Formula One in general, in order to really save the sport, is that Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren, Aston Martin, you could even throw in, they're all gaining ground on that Red Bull. They're all getting closer to them. The gap is smaller, so we could see some interesting battles throughout the season.
And talking about interesting battles, a question I'm going to pose to you, from those top five teams, so Aston Martin, Ferrari, McLaren, Mercedes, those four teams, between those four, who do you think is the closest to gain anywhere near the Red Bulls? From what we've seen so far in testing, that is.
Yeah, like I said a minute ago, I think at this moment in time, the second quickest car is probably the Ferrari. But again, like I said, are they doing it as a statement, say, we're pretty quick? I know they focused a lot on their long run pace, which was kind of the issue last season. They always qualified well, but in the races, the tire wear and that was a little bit too high. So if they're working on that and that seems to be quite good, then maybe they've got the best all round package outside of that Red Bull. I don't think Mercedes would be a million miles away though. I heard rumors that they might be sandbagging a little bit. I don't think they're going to be nowhere near Red Bull yet. But are they close to Ferrari? It remains to be seen.
Onto the back end of the field, and there's been a few reports that Alpine are very much struggling with the aerodynamics, and the car on a whole. Um, I mean, if we look and if we have a look and dissect the kind of the lap time. So day one, it was obviously Pierre Gasly that had the quicker time from the two Alpines, with a 1:32.7, 1:32.8, sorry. And Esteban Ocon was about 2 seconds behind. On day two, it was Esteban Ocon, with a quicker time. He set around a 1:32 flat. And on day three, if we look, both the Alpines are down the order, and both of them set a lap time. Um, well, Pierre Gasly set a lap time of about 1:32 and a bit. Judging on those, and you can't really judge too much on preseason testing because, like we said, it's just so the drivers can get back into the groove, and can get used to their new machinery that they've got underneath them. But judging off those statistics and those times, it's a little bit worrying for Alpine. And it goes to show that they might be struggling just a touch to keep pace with your Aston Martins, and definitely not McLaren. The McLaren are long gone now, so it'd definitely be a battle between Alpine and Aston Martin for that fifth place.
I'd even say they could be find themselves a bit lower down. There's reports that, actually Alpine are the slowest car at the grid at the minute, and there's no real positives with the car that they've made. It's not particularly good in any area, which will be the big worry. We talked about Haas and how bad they've been, and for the reports to be saying that the Alpine's actually worse than that, that's going to be a bit of a concern, I think. You've got two talented drivers there. You give them a good machine, and you know, they both got podiums last season in what was the sixth quickest car. So they're two very, very good drivers. So they're such an underrated driver pairing. I think they just need that a good machine under them, and they will deliver you results. I think they could be in a battle for fourth or fifth if they had a decent car with them, but it just doesn't seem to be working at whatever they've done. And, I think it's going to be a long season for Alpine. I kind of want to take back my season predictions already.
Yeah, that's why I said I didn't watch any of the preseason testing beforehand, just so I can go level-headed into the season predictions. Let's talk about VCarb. Good old Racing Bulls, Visa Cash App Racing Bulls, as they're now called, AlphaTauri, Toro Rosso, however you want to call them. I think they did relatively all right in preseason testing. I mean, a fourth place for Daniel Ricciardo on day one, fifth in day two, and then in day three, Yuki Tsunoda, only 4.5 tenths behind Charles Leclerc's quickest time. Could they be a surprise package this year?
I'm not sure how much of a surprise it's going to be because it's basically, realistically, a lot of it's that Red Bull car from last year, isn't it? So I think a lot of people are kind of ignoring the elephant in the room that a lot of that car is the Red Bull from last year because which is wrong to some extent because it's not then 10 teams, it's 8 teams and then 2 teams that are joined together. Um, they've got a lot of their sort of chassis and suspension um, from that Red Bull. So I think they're going to be up there. They could even be a bit of a surprise candidate and be scoring regular points. They feature in my predictions, which I'm sure we'll get into a little later on. But yeah, I think they'll be there thereabouts. They've got Daniel Ricciardo, who everyone knows what he can do on his day. Yuki Tsunoda, again, another great talent. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. But does it raise a question? Should there be sister teams allowed in F1?
And rounding off our kind of pre-season section, another final question from me to you. Who do you think from the bottom five teams is likely to finish in sixth place? And who is likely to finish last?
Well, based on preseason testing, you got to say VCARB will be sixth and then Alpine will be last. I still think Haas over the course of the season will be last because they just don't have the resources there really. Um, and I'd have to say either VCARB or maybe Williams could get up in the mix. They've had a bit of a quiet preseason testing. I think they had limited running on a couple of the days with a couple of reliability concerns, but they were seventh last season. So maybe they could go one better this season. But I say VCARB at the minute have got to be favourites just because of that close link with Red Bull more than anything.
That rounds off our pre-season section of this episode. Let's head into looking forward to the first race weekend of the year, the Bahrain Grand Prix. Let's have a look back at what happened in 2023. So it was Max Verstappen that ran away with it, 12 seconds ahead of Sergio Perez, with Fernando Alonso in third, Carlos Sainz in fourth, and Lewis Hamilton in fifth. To put things into perspective, Max Verstappen lapped from 12th downwards. Yuki Tsunoda was 90 seconds behind. Alex Albon was close to 90 seconds behind. So most of the field were over a minute behind. Apart from really your Fernando Alonso, your Carlos Sainz, and your Sergio Perez. The rest were 50 seconds onwards. Are we expecting the same sort of domination from Max Verstappen this year, or do we think that the playing field might be a little bit leveled after what started occurring at the back end of last season with McLaren, Ferrari, Mercedes in the mix, and with pre-season testing behind us, with obviously the three teams pushing themselves as much as they can to close the gap to Red Bull?
Well, you got to hope it's going to be smaller. Like I said a minute ago, I don't think it'll be as big as it was last season. And that's all you can really hope for. I still think Verstappen's going to run away and win, be on pole and win, and probably get about 2 minutes of screen time. But just hoping that that gap's going to be smaller.
We can hope and pray. But let's get into our first predictions of the year. Let's kickstart with our two-star predictions. Ethan, could you give me your two-star predictions to start off the year?
So I've gone for a double Haas Q1 exit, and then I'm going to say at least one of the V carbs will finish in the points on Sunday.
It's actually quite relatively close to mine. I've gone with Daniel Ricciardo in the points. I've settled with him in the points over Yuki Tsunoda. And I've gone with a Logan Sargent Q1 exit. I think that I put him down quite low in my season predictions. I'm hoping that he proves me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I've got high hopes for Logan Sargent. But I do think that he will struggle in the first race of the season. So those are my two-star predictions. Logan Sargent Q1 exit and Daniel Ricciardo points on the Saturday. As the race is on Saturday, don't forget. So qualifying on the Friday, I've gone with Max Verstappen pole position once again. I think that's an easy banker for anyone predicting these. And my top three is Charles Leclerc and Lando Norris, with Carlos Sainz and Lewis Hamilton in fourth and in fifth.
Not too dissimilar from mine, actually. So I've also gone for Verstappen to take pole. I've gone Leclerc second, Sainz third, Perez fourth, and Hamilton fifth.
No Lando Norris.
I'm not sure. McLaren haven't been as good as I think people hope for in this preseason. I think he'll be thereabouts. So I think he could be sixth or seventh.
Okay, and in the race, heading into the race, I've gone with a Max Verstappen victory. I've gone with a Ferrari 2 and 3. I've gone with Charles Leclerc in second and Carlos Sainz in third. With the two McLarens of Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri in fourth and fifth. I think that they might throw up a few shocks. I know the race last season didn't go their way. Obviously, Oscar Piastri didn't have a fantastic time, especially with his steering wheel shutting down, and Lando Norris got that puncture, I believe, which saw him a couple of laps down and eventually finish in a lonely position. But I think they'll bounce back this season, and I think they'll finish fourth and fifth. So to recap, my race predictions: Max Verstappen first, Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz second and third, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri to round off the top five.
For my top five, I've gone again Verstappen first. I've gone Leclerc second, Perez third, Sainz fourth. So a bit of a Red Bull Ferrari pairing there, and Hamilton to stage fifth.
Very sturdy predictions, and we will probably get them all wrong anyway, as we usually did at the back end of at the back end of last season we did pretty well. At the start of last season, it was truly woeful. But I mean, it's great to be back. Hoping for a fantastic race in Bahrain. Obviously, thank you for listening. Thank you for interacting with our podcasts. We'll be back next reviewing the Bahrain Grand Prix and previewing the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, as we've got a nice little Middle Eastern double header. Thank you, Ethan, for coming on this episode. We'll be back next week. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.